Hey everyone, a happy Friday news dump at 5:15 p.m. So I want to give just a second because I'm going to go through everything that has happened in the last 2 hours. It's been an insane 2 hours. My stomach was literally in knots. So I'm going to go through what has transpired, and you guys saw me put out on social media like everyone needs to stand by for an all call because really the last 2 hours were incredibly insane. So I am sitting in a salon chair this afternoon about 3 o'clock, and I get a call from Let's Go Washington, and they basically, well, I silenced it, and then I get an immediate text saying 911. The state Supreme Court might invalidate all of the Let's Go Washington initiatives in the next 2 hours. So obviously, I was like, what is going on? So here's what happened. Early this afternoon, Let's Go Washington was notified by their legal counsel that the state Supreme Court, within a matter of 2 hours, would be deciding on a case that was brought months ago, that they were never informed even existed, that challenged the validity of how the Secretary of State's office counted signatures for the initiatives. Now, the only reason Let's Go Washington found out after all these months where this case was playing out, the reason they found out about it today was a reporter, Jerry Cornfield, called them and asked them for comment on it. Basically said, hey, do you have a comment on this case that the state Supreme Court will be deciding on today about whether to invalidate the collection of these signatures? Let's Go Washington had no idea about it. So I'll give you a little bit of info. First, let me tell you that the state Supreme Court just a short time ago threw this lawsuit out, dismissed it. That's a huge sigh of relief, but that doesn't mean that the people involved in this are off the hook. This, in my opinion, based on what I know right now, is corruption at the highest levels, and I'm going to detail all of it for you. And I've talked to the attorneys involved, et cetera. So I'm going to give you the best analysis of what happened that I can. So this case was filed months ago. There's actually two different cases, but in essence, they argue the same thing. One of them was brought about by a group called Defend Washington, which I'm sure you guys have heard about by now. So Defend Washington, it's the one with these left-wing billionaires who are trying to keep all of these policies that the initiative seek to repeal. So you might be asking, how did Let's Go Washington not know about this lawsuit against the initiatives? Well, the lawsuit was against the Secretary of State's office. So technically, in the technical sense, Let's Go Washington wasn't a party to it. Defend Washington sued Secretary of State Steve Hobbs. Now, who is the attorney for Secretary of State Steve Hobbs? Attorney General Bob Ferguson. So what would happen in any other case, really, the expectation would be that because this group is suing over the Let's Go Washington initiatives, now they're suing over how the Secretary of State's office validated the signatures. But by any stretch, by any interpretation, Let's Go Washington clearly should be a party to this lawsuit. One of the very first things the Secretary of State's office or the Attorney General's office should have done is notify Let's Go Washington of this lawsuit so they could write a brief, or more fittingly, so they could be part of the defense of their initiatives that they spent millions of dollars on, that 1.2 million Washington voters took part in signing their names. But for some unknown reason, which we're trying to get to the bottom of, in the last few months that this lawsuit has been going on and making its way to the state Supreme Court, Steve Hobbs's office, or Attorney General Bob Ferguson's office never notified Let's Go Washington that all of the initiatives were in peril. Now, I have heard that directly from the attorney for Let's Go Washington. They are saying that they did not know about it. So we are going to obviously try to get to the bottom of why Secretary of State Steve Hobbs or why the Attorney General's office wouldn't have immediately notified months ago Let's Go Washington about the existence of this lawsuit, so they would have an opportunity to also join the defense for something as significant as potentially the end of all these initiatives that so many Washington voters took part in. So what was the crux of their case? I'm going to read from this lawsuit for you. So there was two simultaneous lawsuits, but they both argued the same thing. They were just by two different groups. So the one from Defend Washington, it listed one, two, three, four, five of the initiatives. The one that's not on here is the one that was just on the gas ban and then also police pursuits. So it said these other initiatives, and it identifies them by number, were each certified by very narrow margins. In certifying the initiatives, the Secretary of State counted hundreds of signatures by petition signers who failed to provide an address demonstrating Washington residency. The Secretary also counted hundreds of signatures by signers who failed to provide an address matching their voter registration address, and by inactive voters, meaning people who are voters but haven't voted in a while. So the long and short of it is they were arguing that when the Secretary of State's office went to make sure there were enough valid signatures to send those initiatives to the legislature and now to the voters, that they did a poor job, that they didn't take the diligence that they should have took in verifying that addresses matched voter registration, that these were active voters, which is very strange. And so the state Supreme Court, there was already a lower court ruling that sided with the Secretary of State's office in Thurston County. Again, totally behind the scenes, no media coverage of it. We didn't know about it. Let's Go Washington didn't know about it. And so the state Supreme Court thankfully upheld that lower court's decision. What's insane, though, is a couple things. And the justices in the lower court said some of this as well, which is in a state like Washington, where we don't have voter ID for voting, and when you have Democrats that are so opposed to taking additional steps to verify the identity of voters, now you have progressive groups sort of making almost the conservative argument that they should have gone to all these extra lengths to make sure that a real voter in Washington used the correct address when they signed out these initiatives. So it was interesting because it's almost progressive groups using a conservative argument to try to nullify all these initiatives. But to me, the really insane part of all of this, because it's not a surprise that these progressive groups funded by billionaires like Nick Hanauer and Bill Gates, that they would try any dirty trick in the book and throw anything at the wall and see what stuck on these initiatives to get them off the ballot. What's shocking, I can't underscore that enough. What's shocking is that this was going on for months without anyone in the media and without Let's Go Washington, which has a huge stake in this, knowing about it. And I'll tell you, they are livid, as you can imagine. I got a statement from Brian Haywood. I'm just going to read it to you. He said, Nick Hanauer and his rich cronies at Defend Washington teamed up with Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer, funded No on 2117 to try to execute a secretive attempt to invalidate the initiative process. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously against them, exposing the anti-democratic tactics of these two groups. He says, we will fight at the ballot box where the citizens' voices will be heard. I also can't understate how significant this would have been if the state Supreme Court, which we know is highly progressive, would have decided that, yeah, we agree. And, we don't think that these initiatives that the signatures were validated enough or correctly. We are pushing up against the deadline when the November ballots and how they're going to read have to be set. So this almost seems like it was a delay tactic from Defend Washington to say, hey, let's see if we can push these challenges back long enough where these initiatives can't appear on the November ballot, thus disenfranchising 1.2 million Washington voters who signed on to at least one of now the 7. So this all is, truly, I can't even tell you how baffled I was that Let's Go Washington didn't know about this. And again, for those of you who joined a little late, the only reason that Let's Go Washington found out that the state Supreme Court was going to decide the fate of the initiatives today was because a reporter called and asked them for comment. Now, I did reach out to that reporter because I wanted to know, is Jerry Cornfield, who's great, and he writes for the State Standard, I wanted to know how long he's known about this because he's very plugged in. Jerry Cornfield is one of the most plugged in political reporters in the state. How he found out is also, by accident. So there was a different lawsuit that the state Supreme Court was going to hear today about the initiatives. It was brought by Jim Walsh, who is the crafter of the initiatives, the verbiage, and they were challenging this little trick that Democrats pulled to say, hey, we have to write on the ballot next to the initiatives what the fiscal impacts will be. Like, oh, if you get rid of this program, we're going to lose X amount of money and it's going to hurt these programs, which to me isn't a fair thing to do. Because if you're going to do that, you should also put on the ballot like the benefits of repealing the program. You know what I mean? So Jim Walsh, they had tried to sue over it. So Jerry Cornfield was going to cover that lawsuit and the result of that lawsuit in the state Supreme Court today. And that one was very public. Everyone knew about it. So he's on the state Supreme Court website to look into, the details of when that was going to happen today, when he saw this other one, which again was a complete surprise to him. And so that's when he called Let's Go Washington for comment. That's how they found out. That's how I found out. That's how you're finding out right now. And I was obviously like in a little bit of a panic state thinking, oh my God, what if the state Supreme Court like sends these initiatives back to the Secretary of State's office or whatever for a recount? And I guess I was absolutely livid, right? But I was making some phone calls trying to figure out what had happened and get to the bottom of it and talk to Jerry Cornfield as well. And I mean, I've never experienced a situation where a lawsuit of this nature went under the radar long. And I go back to how this would have looked if these were nullified. It would have looked like the Secretary of State intentionally counted signatures wrong to allow for a challenge. It would have looked like the Attorney General's office didn't defend it very well to allow for them to be thrown out. And this has been the concern of really anyone who's been involved in the initiative process, going back to Tim Eyman initiatives, that, how many times have we passed $30 car tabs? And then they just find a way to nullify it. So this would have upended, I think, so many things, and people would have absolutely revolted, and rightfully so. Now, I know 100% what Attorney General Bob Ferguson will say. Hey, we defended the Secretary of State's handling of these initiatives, and we won in court. So I defended it. So you can't be mad at me. Like, I'm the one who helped, make sure that this didn't get thrown out. But again, I would just point to, there's no excuse for the Attorney General's office or the Secretary of State's office not immediately reaching out to Let's Go Washington to inform them of a serious challenge to the initiatives and giving them a chance to be part of the defense. There is no reason in the world that they should have to find out from a reporter the day that the case is going to be decided. I'd also note that the only other way, if you're wondering like, well, they should have known, maybe they should have been checking court records. You would have to be proactively every day across all the counties in the state, just perusing court cases to see if there's one about you. I mean, that just isn't reasonable. That's the only way they could have found out about it without being told by the Secretary of State's office or the Attorney General's office. And by the way, Defend Washington never put out a press release, to my knowledge. We've searched and searched, saying that they were filing suit against this. So it's just wild that the only way the media, Let's Go Washington, whatever, found out about it is Jerry Cornfield happened to be perusing the state Supreme Court website today. So a lot of credit to Jerry Cornfield. And I'm getting comments and stuff from folks right now about this. So I'll make sure that I share any with you. I want to answer any questions that you guys have. I'm sorry for coming to you from my spare bedroom office today, but I was at home when I found out. So make sure that you put any comments in. Now, I think this raises another question too. First of all, it's crazy to me, and I think that the AG's office should have recused itself from this case and any cases involving the initiatives, because Bob Ferguson's opposed to them personally. He's on the record opposing the initiatives. So why in the hell would Bob Ferguson's office be allowed to defend the Secretary of State's office in a case that could decide the fate of the initiatives? Now, in this case, they prevailed, and he's going to say, we did our job, we did what we were supposed to do. But still, why would we even want any sort of room for or feeling that there could be impropriety? And, we've gone through this so many times with $30 car tabs and fearing about, how are they going to try to upend this or, use the courts to their advantage. So I think there's a lot of people who signed the initiatives, who support the initiatives, who put a lot of volunteer hours or money into the initiatives, who realize that even when they do pass in November, which they will, who realize that these groups, they don't care what the people of Washington want. They're going to continue to try to use the court system to invalidate them, to overturn them somehow legislatively, if at all possible, to erode them, because they don't care actually about democracy. If they cared about democracy, they would look at these overwhelming initiative efforts and they would have said, all right, let's let the people decide. Let's send it to the voters. And if the voters don't want these policies that we passed, we serve the voters. And so, that's how democracy works, but they're not doing that. They're going behind the scenes, surreptitiously, secretly, and they're trying at every turn to keep these initiatives off the ballot. Think about that. They don't want you to get to vote on policies that impact you every single day, on policies that 1.2 million people have said they want at least one of. So that's again, when they say, oh, Republicans threat to democracy and all of this, how is this not a threat to democracy? The effort of progressive groups to keep you from being able to vote on these initiatives. So I after this, everyone has to be on high alert. We can't put our guard down. There is so much money being pumped in right now to the effort to oppose the initiatives on all the no on initiative campaigns. As Brian Haywood pointed out, you've got billionaires like the Ballmers, like Bill Gates, putting millions of their own money into the effort to keep the Climate Commitment Act. And the way I've characterized that is so you've got billionaires spending millions of dollars to make sure that working class people have to pay more at the gas pump. That's insane. So I'm just going to really quickly recap, and I want to make sure I'm not missing. It's just me today, so I'm just trying to look at the comments, make sure I don't miss any crazy stories. There's a lot of interesting comments on here, but so I'm just going to recap really quickly, an abbreviated version in case anyone hopped on late. So Let's Go Washington found out about 1 p.m. today that all the initiatives were in peril, that the state Supreme Court was going to decide whether the initiatives could continue to move forward or whether the Secretary of State's office had to recount and re-verify signatures. The only reason they found out is a reporter happened to be perusing the state Supreme Court website and saw information about this lawsuit. The lawsuit was from Defend Washington, which is against all the initiatives, and it was filed against the Secretary of State's office, challenging how the office validated signatures to ensure there was enough signatures to send those initiatives to the legislature. The Secretary of State's office, according to Let's Go Washington, they were never notified about this lawsuit by the Secretary of State's office or by the Attorney General's office, which anyone who knows anything about cases like this, anyone who has any legal experience knows that is very strange, that they had every right in the world to be a party to this lawsuit. So that is crooked to the core. I don't understand it one bit. We, again, are going to reach out to the Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General's office to ask them why Let's Go Washington was not immediately notified about the existence of this lawsuit. Thankfully, the state Supreme Court today upheld the lower court's ruling. So these initiatives are fine as of this moment. This would have been an insane situation today. That's why I post on my social media pages, buckle up, get ready for an all hands on deck call. Because I'll tell you, our asses would have been at the state capitol 24 hours a day until they fix this freaking thing. So I don't think this is going to be the last effort. We need to hold the Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General's office accountable for allowing us all to be blindsided by this. Because if it would have gone another way, Let's Go Washington would have said, we had no knowledge of this. We weren't able to defend our initiatives. So that I don't know why the Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General's office would have allowed that to happen, knowing that could have threw into question everything, the case and the fairness and all of that. So that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of now. Again, I would just say to Attorney General Bob Ferguson's office, that office should recuse itself from any legal issues surrounding the initiatives. Bob Ferguson is on the record opposing them. He should absolutely not, in his office, should not have any role whatsoever in defending the initiatives, in defending the initiative process. That seems very, very cut and dry. Again, from Brian Haywood, I think the biggest takeaway, he says, We will fight at the ballot box where the citizens' voices will be heard. But there is a lot of time between now and November. There's a lot of money that's being used to oppose these initiatives. So every single person who supports them, or who supports democracy, who supports people being able to choose whether we keep these policies in our state, I mean, you need to be telling your family and friends about them. You need to be sharing information about them. We're going to be doing a lot of fact checks on the no campaigns because there's a ton of lies circulating out there. The bottom line is you can oppose these initiatives, but if you actually care about democracy, you should want people to be able to choose. This is a check. There's a reason why there's a constitutional right to initiative. It's so the people can have a direct check on the party in power and on the legislature as a whole. And so if we don't value and uphold that process, we're going to lose it. Democrats are dangerously close to supermajorities. I think one of the very first things they'll do with a supermajority is try to erode our rights to initiative and referendum. I just point out, they already have found an end route around the referendum process, because every time they pass a bill that they know might be subject to a referendum, a bill that is very unpopular, what did they do? They attach an emergency clause onto the end of it, whether it's an emergency or not. Most times it's not an emergency, but they call it an emergency, which means it takes effect right away. They put emergency clause on the end of it. And an emergency clause means that the bill cannot be subject to referendum. So that has happened with numerous high-profile bills, controversial bills over the last few years. It's an abuse of the emergency clause, and it is a big freaking middle finger to the referendum process and to the people of the state of Washington. So they've already essentially rendered referendums completely useless. So all we really have is the initiative process left. And to see the left attack it in the way that they're attacking it is terrifying. And it should be terrifying for anyone who believes in our democratic process. So bullet dodge today. I'm like literally sweating, and not because it's hot out, but because the last 3 hours has been so freaking stressful. Poor Nicole. She was in a pool somewhere with friends, and I'm like, we might have to go into the studio. And like, she was ready. If we had to, she was ready if they knock these initiatives down. So, this should reinvigorate us to fight for these initiatives, to fight for people to have a choice, to hold individuals accountable who are trying to undercut the democratic process. We will reach out to the Secretary of State's office. We will reach out to the Attorney General's office to demand why they didn't let Let's Go Washington know about these lawsuits, and why the AG's office is even part of these lawsuits, considering the AG's own personal animus against the initiatives. And holy smokes, I'm shocked how many of you have tuned in on a Friday afternoon. But I'd also point out, Friday afternoon news dump, like, hey, let's try to undo the people's initiatives on a Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. Like, that's the oldest freaking trick in the book. I never thought I'd say this, though. Thank you to the state Supreme Court for seeing this for what it was, because I think they also knew, if we agree with this argument that there needs to be more due diligence in verifying like voters and where they live and their lawful residency, that was going to undercut their argument against voter ID laws, against making it fairly easy for undocumented immigrants to register and vote on the front end. You're not supposed to do that. It's against the law, but they really have no protections against it. So I think that there was this element of, if we do this, like that's going to be, the conservatives are going to be kind of correct in their arguments about strengthening, voter laws. It would have upended everything. It would have been absolutely crazy. So anyway, I just wanted to jump on, literally sweating, and let you guys know what happened. We'll be pushing some more stuff out about this, but I'll just go back to what Brian said. We're going to fight at the ballot box, and we're going to fight every day up to the ballot, up to November, to make sure that the information being shared with Washingtonians about these things is honest, so that they can make a decision based on the facts. That's all I ever want. And I'll just say, I have my opinions. Larry Olson, love you too. Oh, well, you said thank you. I thought it said I love you, but I do love you. That's all I ever want. I know I have my opinions on things. I know I have strong opinions about candidates for and against and on these initiatives, but I'm a journalist at heart still. I might not be a journalist in practice anymore, but I'm a journalist at heart. And all I want is for people to make decisions about candidates and issues based on factual information. And hell, if they vote against them based on facts, fine. That's what they want. If they vote for Bob Ferguson to be governor based on facts, fine. That's what they want. Who am I to say that they're wrong and I'm right? I think Dave Reichert's a better choice. I think the initiatives are great, but at the end of the day, I believe in we the people. And we the people is everyone in the state of Washington, whether they agree with my politics or not. We the people are even the socialists in Seattle. I mean, they're we the people too. So I want we the people to have a voice and a choice, even if it doesn't align with mine. And I, for one, think progressive groups ought to want the same thing because they claim that that's what they care about, democracy. And I think it's high time that they show it. So help me do that. Help me make sure that people have factual information to base these decisions off of, that we're calling out the lies when we see them, like the lie that the CCA wouldn't raise gas prices. I mean, there's so much work to be done. You can tell I'm pissed off because I genuinely hate when people are lied to. I hate when people are lied to by individuals who they put in office to serve them. For the love of God, like it drives me nuts. And even people who support someone like Bob Ferguson or progressives and hate these initiatives, you should hate being lied to. Like, don't let them do that to you. Think more of yourself. Somebody said, can you score her some bud, like a local dispensary? Who needs bud? Are you talking about me to calm down? I'm never going to calm down. I'm fired up. Won't take it no more. Anyway, so I'm going to write something up on this, make sure that people who couldn't tune into the live know what's going on. I appreciate Let's Go Washington alerting me to this absolutely instantly. This is funny. Nicole Thompson says, I'm getting lots of texts from people who are worried about your first post. Seriously, I feel like I have PTSD from it. I put up a post saying like something bad's happening. Get ready to gear up. I'll have to go back and like add some context to that post. So anyway, okay. Thank you guys for the super chats. I didn't expect super chats today. That's very nice of you. You guys are great. I'm sorry I couldn't read more comments. Kim says, Brandi, how guilty is the state media for being silent? They didn't know about it. Again, I don't blame the media on this one because I blame them on not calling out lies about things. But on this one, unless you are actively like in the court, online, like looking through all the court cases to find ones that are of interest, the hundreds of court cases, you wouldn't have seen it. It was the job of the Secretary of State's office or the AG's office to alert Let's Go Washington that this was happening. And Let's Go Washington would have let the public know. They would have demanded to be part of the lawsuit. So this is one of the rare instances where I don't blame the media for not knowing. In fact, a lot of credit, get on Jerry Kornfeld's Twitter and thank him for covering this case today. Because without Jerry Kornfeld doing his job on a Friday afternoon and looking at what was happening in the state Supreme Court because he was going to cover a different case, no one would have known about it. We would have been completely blindsided. So, I mean, the fact that he was doing that, he absolutely deserves some credit for that. And I know he's putting out a story about it now. And one of the other issues is the media is decimated. They don't have time or the bodies to do this stuff. And they're decimated because a lot of their coverage sucks and their ratings are tanking, but all that. When I was covering the courts, and I know I was going to jump off, but now you've got me on a tangent. When I used to cover the courts, my very first job in Seattle as a reporter, I would go down to the courthouse and I would spend an hour a day, most days, on the computer at the courthouse, browsing through search warrants that had been applied for and filed. And then I'd go in there and I'd find interesting crimes that we didn't know about. And I had the time to do it. Reporters don't have the time to do it. Maybe they're also a little bit lazy because social media has made them lazy. They can take a video off social media or a tweet and that can be their story for the day. But, it's just not like it used to be where you had 5 reporters who were covering crime and justice in the courts and they had time to peruse things. So this is just an insane situation. Like I genuinely... I don't even know what to freaking make of the fact that this happened today. I felt bad for the lady cutting my hair because I'd never gone to her before because my normal hair places in Ballard. And so right away, like I sit down and she just got done shampooing my hair and I'm like, oh no. And I'm sitting there like, I got an emergency and I'm texting up a storm and trying to take phone calls while she's doing my hair. And she's like, is everything okay? I'm like, it's not okay. Everything's not okay. but I got my hair cut. So that's all that matters, right? And then I rushed back here to talk to you guys and fill you in on everything that happened. So the initiatives continue. We march forth to November. We march forth more invigorated and pissed off than ever. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing worse for the party in power than a pissed off populace. So let's make it count, okay, you guys? Have a good Friday. Absolutely love all of you. Thank you for the super chats. It's so nice. I didn't expect super chats today. I was just getting on in my sweaty, no makeup self, and you guys are the best. Okay, all right. We fight. We go. We fight to November. No idle hands. I'll see you guys on Sundays with subscribers on the live show on Monday. Okay, bye-bye.